The morning sun filtered through worn curtains, casting a warm glow across the Hayes' small kitchen. Daniel stood at the stove, expertly flipping pancakes while keeping an eye on the clock mounted on the faded yellow wall. The aroma of coffee and maple syrup filled the air, masking the worry that nagged at him whenever he glanced at the stack of bills on the counter. "Dad, you're burning the edges again," Lily called out from the kitchen table, her textbook spread around her half-eaten breakfast. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she wore her favorite second-hand sweater, the blue one with tiny silver stars that Daniel had found at the thrift store last Christmas. "Critics these days," Daniel chuckled, sliding the slightly crispy pancake onto a plate. "When did you become such a breakfast expert?" Lily rolled her eyes, but couldn't hide her smile. "Since forever. Mom always said you could fix any car, but couldn't make a perfect pancake to save your life." The mention of her mother brought a familiar ache to Daniel's chest, but he kept his voice light. "Your mom had impossibly high standards. These are what I call character pancakes, built tough, just like us." "Whatever helps you sleep at night, Dad." Lily gathered her books, stuffing them into her worn backpack. She paused at the pile of bills, her smile faltering slightly. Daniel quickly moved to distract her. "Hey, ready for our downtown adventure? I need to pick up some parts for Mrs. Johnson's Chevy, and maybe we can window shop a bit." "Really?" Lily's face brightened. She knew window shop was code for look but don't buy, but she appreciated her father's efforts to make their necessary errands feel special. The downtown plaza was alive with weekend energy when they arrived. Street musicians played on corners, and the smell of fresh bread wafted from the local bakery. Daniel watched as Lily's attention drifted toward Milton's books, where a new display featured colorful young adult novels behind pristine glass. "Dad, look!" Lily pressed her nose against the window, her eyes wide. "They have the new Sarah Spencer series. Everyone at school is talking about it." Daniel's heart squeezed. The price tag visible on the hardcover would mean skipping an oil change on his truck, but seeing Lily's excitement made him consider it anyway. Before he could respond, the peaceful Saturday morning shattered. The first gunshot cracked like thunder. Daniel's body reacted before his mind could process what was happening. He spotted a young woman in a pale blue dress directly in the line of fire, frozen in terror. "Lily, cover!" he shouted, lunging forward. In one fluid motion, he grabbed the woman and spun her behind a concrete planter. His daughter was already diving behind a nearby bench, her quick thinking making him proud even in the chaos. More shots rang out. People screamed and ran in all directions. Daniel kept his body pressed over the woman, feeling her trembling beneath him. A sudden burning sensation ripped across his upper arm, but adrenaline dulled the pain. "Stay down," he commanded, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. The woman, he noticed she couldn't be much older than 25, nodded mutely, her fingers gripping his jacket. "Lily?" he called out, his heart pounding. "Talk to me, sweetheart." "I'm okay." "Dad!" Lily's voice was shaky but clear. "I'm safe behind the bench!" The shooting stopped as suddenly as it had begun. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder by the second. Daniel maintained his protective stance until he was certain the danger had passed. "Are you hurt?" he asked the woman, finally easing back slightly. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "You saved my life," she whispered, her blue eyes wide with shock. "You didn't even know me, but you—" That's when Daniel noticed the warm wetness seeping through his sleeve. The graze was deeper than he'd initially thought, and now that the adrenaline was fading, the pain began to pulse in earnest. "Dad, you're bleeding!" Lily appeared beside them, her face pale but composed. She quickly pulled off her sweater, pressing it against his wound with trembling hands. Police cars and ambulances flooded the plaza. EMTs rushed forward with their equipment, and Daniel found himself being guided onto a stretcher despite his protests. "My daughter," he insisted, trying to sit up. "She needs to come with me." "I'm right here, Dad," Lily assured him, her hand finding his. "I'm not going anywhere." The young woman he'd protected hadn't let go of his other hand, her grip tight as if she was afraid he'd disappear. "Please," she said to the EMTs, "let me ride with them. He saved my life. I'm Rebecca Jennings, and I'll make sure everything is taken care of." Daniel barely registered her words as the pain medication began to take effect. The last thing he saw before the ambulance doors closed was the morning sun glinting off the bookstore window, where just moments ago his biggest worry had been affording a novel for his daughter. Now, with Lily's warm hand in his and the sirens blaring overhead, he sent up a silent prayer of thanks that they were both alive to worry about another day. The fluorescent lights of the emergency room buzzed overhead as Daniel Hayes lay back against the thin hospital pillow, his arm freshly bandaged. The wound had been minor, just a graze that required a few stitches, but the doctors insisted on monitoring him for a few hours. Lily sat in a chair beside his bed, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her sweater, her eyes darting between her father and the door. "I'm fine, sweetheart," Daniel assured her, noticing her worried expression. "It's just a scratch." "A scratch from a bullet, Dad," Lily countered, her voice trembling slightly. "You could have—" Before she could finish, there was a soft knock at the door. A young woman with honey blonde hair stepped into the room, her designer clothes slightly disheveled from the day's events. Her eyes were red-rimmed, as if she'd been crying. "Mr. Hayes?" Her voice was gentle, almost hesitant. "I'm Rebecca. Rebecca Jennings. I needed to thank you properly." Daniel tried to sit up straighter, but winced as the movement pulled at his stitches. "Please, don't worry about it. Anyone would have done the same." "No," Rebecca said firmly, moving closer to his bedside. "They wouldn't have, and we both know that." She glanced at Lily, offering a warm smile. "You must be so proud of your father." Lily nodded, sitting up taller. "I've always been proud of him." Rebecca's eyes welled with tears again. "Mr. Hayes, there's something I need to tell you. My father, he's Henry Jennings." Daniel's expression remained blank for a moment before Lily gasped. "Henry Jennings? The CEO of Jennings Global?" Rebecca nodded, looking somewhat uncomfortable. "Yes, he's already on his way here. He wants to thank you personally for saving me." She twisted her hands together. "I know this might be overwhelming, but my father—" When he heard what happened. A commotion outside the room drew their attention. Through the small window in the door, they could see hospital staff trying to manage what appeared to be a growing crowd of people with cameras and microphones. "Are those reporters?" Daniel asked, his voice tightening with concern. Rebecca moved to peek through the window, then turned back with an apologetic expression. "I'm so sorry. Someone must have leaked the story. My father's PR team is usually very quick. But—" As if on cue, a phone buzzed. Lily pulled hers from her pocket, her eyes widening as she read the screen. "Dad, you're trending." She turned the phone to show him a news website's homepage. The headline blazed across the screen. "Single Dad Shields CEO's Daughter from Gunfire." Daniel's face paled. Below the headline was a grainy photo, clearly taken from someone's phone, showing him throwing himself in front of Rebecca as chaos erupted around them. The article already had thousands of shares. "Oh no," he muttered, running his good hand through his hair. "This isn't— I didn't do it for attention." "Of course you didn't," Rebecca said quickly. "That's exactly why people are so moved by it. You didn't know who I was, you just acted." More commotion erupted in the hallway. Through the door, they could hear voices calling out questions. "Is it true he's a single father?" "Can you confirm the victim was Rebecca Jennings?" "How did a mechanic become today's biggest hero?" Lily was scrolling through her phone, her eyes growing wider by the second. "Dad, people are calling you a hero everywhere. Look at all these comments." Her voice was filled with wonder and pride. "They're saying such amazing things about you." Daniel shifted uncomfortably in the bed, the thin hospital gown crinkling under his movement. The same hands that had been changing oil and fixing engines this morning were now being discussed all over social media. It felt surreal, like he'd stepped into someone else's life. "I should let you rest," Rebecca said softly, sensing his discomfort. "But please know, Mr. Hayes, my father will want to express his gratitude properly." "What you did today." She paused, emotion catching in her throat. "You didn't just save my life. You showed there are still good people in the world who act without wanting anything in return." After Rebecca left, Daniel turned toward the window. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, a peaceful contrast to the chaos unfolding in the hospital corridors. He could hear the muffled voices of reporters still trying to get the story, the squeaking of nurses' shoes as they hurried past, the constant ping of phones as news continued to spread. Lily moved to sit on the edge of his bed, careful not to disturb his injured arm. Her eyes shone with a mix of pride and hope he hadn't seen in a long time. "Dad?" she whispered, her voice barely audible above the hospital's ambient noise. "Maybe things are finally going to change for us." Daniel looked at his daughter's hopeful face, at the warmth and pride shining in her eyes, and felt a wave of uncertainty wash over him as he gazed back out at the darkening sky and the growing number of news vans in the parking lot below. The next morning's sunrise painted the hospital corridor in soft golden hues as Daniel Hayes buttoned up his worn denim shirt. His bandaged arm protested slightly, but the pain medication kept most of the discomfort at bay. Lily hovered nearby, carrying his small overnight bag, her face a mixture of concern and excitement. "The nurse says there are reporters outside," she whispered, peeking through the narrow window. "Like, a lot of them." Daniel's stomach tightened. He was used to fixing cars, not facing cameras. Before he could respond, Rebecca Jennings appeared in the doorway, looking fresh and composed in a powder blue blazer. "I've arranged for security to help us through," she said warmly. "My father's driver is waiting at the side entrance. Please, let us give you a ride home." The walk through the hospital felt surreal. Camera flashes exploded through the glass doors and reporters shouted questions that bounced off the sterile walls. Rebecca walked beside Daniel, her presence like a shield, while two burly security guards cleared a path. "Mr. Hayes, how does it feel to be a hero?" "Did you know who Rebecca Jennings was when you saved her? What made you risk your life for a stranger?" Daniel kept his head down, his hand on Lily's shoulder, guiding her through the chaos. Rebecca's voice cut through the noise, clear and authoritative. "Mr. Hayes needs rest. My father will release a statement later today." The ride home in the sleek black SUV was quiet. But Daniel could feel Lily practically vibrating with contained excitement. Rebecca sat across from them, typing occasionally on her phone but mostly watching Daniel with a grateful expression that made him uncomfortable. "My father wants to make this right," she said softly as they pulled up to Daniel's modest two-story house. "He's not just grateful. He's impressed by your character, Mr. Hayes." Daniel nodded, managing a small smile. "Thank you for the ride, Miss Jennings." Inside their home, reality hit him in waves. The kitchen counter was buried under piles of letters, cards, and packages. Lily dove into them immediately, her eyes wide with wonder. "Dad, look! This one's from Minnesota, and here's one from Florida." She pulled out a handmade card covered in glitter. "They're calling you a hero everywhere." Daniel watched his daughter's joy, allowing himself to feel a flicker of hope. Maybe this attention could lead to something positive. Maybe doors would open for Lily's future. The house phone rang, shattering his reverie. It was the bank, again. They'd seen him on the news and wanted to discuss his account status. Before he could hang up, another call beeped through, and another. Throughout the afternoon, neighbors dropped by unannounced, bringing casseroles and barely concealed curiosity. Mrs. Peterson from next door lingered particularly long, fishing for details about Rebecca Jennings and her father's wealth. "Such a lovely girl," she mused, eyes scanning their living room's worn furniture. "I suppose you'll be seeing more of her family now." Daniel escaped to the kitchen, pretending to check on dinner. The TV hummed in the background, where talk show hosts dissected his actions with surgical precision. But why would a mechanic just happen to be there at that exact moment? One pundit questioned, his tone dripping with skepticism. And right next to the daughter of Henry Jennings? "It does seem convenient," another agreed. "Especially given the current economic climate." Daniel switched off the TV, his chest tight. He heard a small sound from upstairs and found Lily in her room, sitting on her bed with her laptop, tears streaming down her face. "Sweetheart?" He rushed to her side. "What's wrong?" Lily tried to close the laptop, but not before he caught glimpses of social media posts. His heart sank as he read comments from her classmates. "Guess Hayes finally found her meal ticket. Wonder how much her dad got paid for that heroic moment. CEO's charity case got an upgrade." "They're all talking about it," Lily whispered, her voice breaking. "Madison Peters shared it with everyone. She said you probably planned it all." Daniel gathered his daughter in his arms, careful of his injured side. Lily buried her face in his shirt, her shoulders shaking. I thought things would be better, she sobbed, but they're just being mean. Later that night, after Lily had cried herself out, Daniel tucked her into bed just like he had when she was small. The moonlight filtered through her window, casting shadows on the walls covered with honor roll certificates and art projects. "Dad?" Her voice was small, vulnerable. "I'm sorry I got excited about all this. Maybe we should just tell everyone to leave us alone." Daniel sat on the edge of her bed, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. "You have nothing to be sorry for, sweetheart." He closed his eyes briefly, summoning the words his late wife would have used. "Let's pray together, okay?" Lily nodded, clasping her hands together as she had since childhood. Daniel's voice was soft but steady in the quiet room. "Lord, give us strength for whatever comes our way. Help us remember that our worth isn't in what others say about us, but in who you made us to be. Protect Lily's heart from cruelty and help me be the father she needs. Amen." "Amen," Lily whispered back, her eyes already heavy with sleep. Daniel stayed until her breathing evened out, his mind racing with determination. He would weather this storm. He would shield her from the harsh spotlight, from the whispers and accusations, from anything that threatened to dim her bright spirit. He had protected her from a bullet. He would protect her from this too. Rising carefully, he pulled her comforter up to her shoulders and placed a gentle kiss on her forehead. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, in the quiet of her room, he renewed his promise. The same one he'd made the day she was born, the day her mother died, and every day since. He would do whatever it took to keep his daughter safe and whole. The morning sun streamed through the grimy windows of Hayes Auto Repair, catching dust motes that danced in the air. Daniel wiped his hands on a shop rag, leaving dark smears on the already stained cloth. The garage was unusually busy, but not with actual customers. Curious onlookers kept dropping by, phones ready to snap pictures, hoping to catch a glimpse of the hero mechanic. Mike, his longtime assistant, fielded another call at the front desk. "No, ma'am, we're not giving interviews. Yes, this is Hayes Auto Repair. No, I can't put Mr. Hayes on the phone." Daniel sighed, focusing on the transmission he was trying to repair. The work kept his mind off the whispers and stares. Some visitors pretended to need oil changes just to get a look at him. Others were more direct, asking for selfies or attempting to film him while he worked. The bell above the shop door chimed again. Daniel didn't look up, expecting another gawker, until he heard Lily's excited, "Rebecca!" He turned to see Rebecca Jennings standing in his shop, looking somewhat out of place in her elegant cream-colored dress, but wearing a genuine smile. "I hope I'm not interrupting," Rebecca said, glancing around the workspace with interest rather than judgment. "I wanted to thank you again, and, well, I thought maybe you and Lily might join me for lunch." Lily's eyes lit up, but she looked to her father first. Daniel hesitated, aware of the grease stains on his coveralls. "I appreciate the offer, but please, Dad?" Lily's voice was soft, hopeful. Rebecca stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I know a quiet place where no one will bother us. Just a simple lunch, nothing fancy." 20 minutes later, after changing into clean clothes, Daniel found himself sliding into a booth at Mel's Diner, a family-owned place he'd driven past 100 times but never entered. The vinyl seats were worn but clean, and the smell of coffee and home cooking filled the air. Lily sat beside Rebecca, both of them studying laminated menus. "Order whatever you'd like," Rebecca insisted when Daniel's eyes automatically drifted to the prices. "Please, I insist." Over plates of meatloaf and mashed potatoes, Rebecca had surprised them by ordering the same. The conversation flowed more easily than Daniel expected. Rebecca's perfectly maintained exterior seemed to soften in the casual atmosphere. "Sometimes I feel like I live in a fishbowl," she confessed, pushing peas around her plate. "Everyone watching, waiting for me to make a mistake. Father's business partners, the society columns, even my so-called friends. They all want something." Daniel noticed the shadow that crossed her face, recognizing the loneliness in her eyes. It reminded him of the look Lily sometimes got when missing her mother. "That must be hard," Lily said, her natural empathy showing through. "Like being on stage all the time?" Rebecca's face brightened at Lily's understanding. "Exactly. You know, this is the first real conversation I've had in weeks that didn't feel scripted." Lily giggled at that, and soon both she and Rebecca were trading stories about awkward social situations. Daniel watched in amazement as his daughter's usual reserve melted away. Her laughter, clear and genuine, filled their corner of the diner. Over dessert, apple pie a la mode that Rebecca insisted they couldn't skip, she brought up something that made Daniel's fork pause halfway to his mouth. "I mentioned to Father how bright Lily is," Rebecca said, her tone carefully casual. "There's an opening at Riverside Prep for the upcoming semester. It's one of the best schools in the state." Daniel's chest tightened. He knew of Riverside Prep. Every parent did. It was the kind of school where future senators and CEOs got their start, the kind of school that cost more per year than he made in 3. "That's very kind," he began, but Rebecca held up a hand. "Please, let me finish. This isn't charity, Daniel. They have a merit scholarship program, and with Lily's grades, she'd qualify easily. I'd like to help with the application process, make sure her name gets the attention it deserves." Lily sat very still, hardly breathing, her eyes wide with possibility. Daniel could see the hope there, the dreams she usually kept carefully hidden. "Could I at least look at it, Dad?" she asked quietly. "Just to see?" Looking at his daughter's face, Daniel felt his resistance wavering. "We can look," he said carefully. "No promises." The smile that lit up Lily's face was almost worth the weight of obligation settling on his shoulders. Later that night, long after Lily had gone to bed, Daniel lay awake staring at his ceiling. The day's events played on repeat in his mind, his daughter's laughter echoing through the diner, the way her eyes had sparkled when Rebecca described Riverside Prep's advanced science program. The scholarship papers now sitting on his kitchen table, waiting for his signature. Pride and fear wrestled in his chest. Pride in Lily, in her intelligence and potential, in the way she'd connected with Rebecca without a trace of artifice. But fear, too. Fear of stepping into a world so far removed from their own, of owing a debt he could never repay, of watching his daughter grow beyond the simple life he'd given her. The bedroom felt too quiet, too empty. In moments like these, he missed Sarah most. His late wife would have known exactly what to do. She always had a way of cutting through his doubts to find the right path. Daniel turned onto his side, watching moonlight filter through his window blinds. Somewhere across town, in a mansion he could barely imagine, Rebecca Jennings was probably lying awake too, trapped in her own kind of loneliness. And down the hall, his daughter slept, perhaps dreaming of new possibilities. Monday morning arrived crisp and clear as Daniel's old pickup truck rumbled to a stop in front of Riverside Academy. The prestigious private school rose before them like something from a movie, all red brick and ivy with marble columns framing the entrance. Students in neat uniforms streamed past, their leather bags and shiny shoes speaking of wealth Daniel could barely imagine. Next to him, Lily fidgeted with her new uniform tie. "Dad, what if they can tell I don't belong here?" Daniel's heart squeezed. He reached over and straightened her tie with gentle hands. "You belong anywhere you set your mind to, sweetheart. Remember what Mom used to say? Our worth isn't in what we own, but in how we love," Lily quoted softly, managing a small smile. "That's right." Daniel squeezed her hand. "Now, head high. You've got this." They walked together toward the entrance, Daniel trying not to feel self-conscious about his work boots and worn jacket among the sea of luxury cars and designer clothes. A woman in her 50s stood greeting students at the door, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun. "You must be Lily Hayes," she said warmly, extending her hand. "I'm Mrs. Thompson, your homeroom teacher. We're so pleased to have you join us." Relief washed over Daniel as he watched Lily's shoulders relax slightly. Mrs. Thompson's kind eyes held no judgment, only welcome. "Thank you, ma'am," Lily replied politely. "I understand you have quite a talent for creative writing," Mrs. Thompson continued. "We're actually starting a new poetry unit today. Perfect timing." Lily's face lit up, and Daniel felt his worry ease a fraction more. He hugged her goodbye, watching until she disappeared inside with Mrs. Thompson. The days that followed brought changes Daniel hadn't dared hope for. Lily came home bubbling with stories about her classes, her eyes bright with excitement as she talked about chemistry experiments and Shakespeare discussions. Her old spark returned, lighting up their small home with possibility. Rebecca became a regular visitor, dropping by the house or the shop several times a week. She seemed to shed layers of tension every time she crossed their threshold, trading designer heels for borrowed slippers, curling up on their worn couch like she belonged there. One quiet evening, as Lily worked on homework at the kitchen table, Rebecca helped Daniel wash dishes, something she admitted she'd never done before. "You know what's strange?" she said, carefully drying a plate. "I have a dining room bigger than your whole apartment, but I've never felt as comfortable there as I do right here." Daniel passed her another dish. "Sometimes the fanciest cage is still a cage." Rebecca's hand stilled. "That's exactly it. Every room in our house feels like a museum piece. Don't touch, don't disturb, don't be real." She gestured around their small kitchen. "But here, everything feels lived in, loved. There are memories in these walls." "And a few water stains," Daniel joked, but his voice was gentle. "Can I tell you something?" Rebecca set down her dish towel. "That day, when you saved me, it wasn't just the bullet you saved me from. Being here, seeing how you and Lily live, it's teaching me what really matters." She moved to the living room window, looking out at their tiny yard where Lily had planted wildflowers in mismatched containers. "I grew up with everything money could buy, but I was so lonely. My father's always working, my mother's always at charity events, and everyone else just wants something from us." Her voice cracked slightly. "But you and Lily? You've never asked for anything. You just share what you have." Daniel leaned against the doorframe, understanding deepening in his chest. "God doesn't measure wealth in dollars," he said quietly. "Sometimes the richest blessings come in the simplest packages." Rebecca wiped her eyes, laughing softly. "Like dish soap and homework help?" "Like having people who see you for who you are, not what you own," Daniel replied. Later that night, after Rebecca had gone home and the house had settled into silence, Daniel stood in Lily's doorway. His daughter slept peacefully, her homework neat on her desk, her uniform hanging ready for tomorrow. Moonlight filtered through the window, touching her face with silver. "Lord," he whispered, "maybe this is your plan after all, teaching us all that true wealth isn't about money at all." He watched Lily's gentle breathing, gratitude filling his heart. "It's about having enough love to share." The moment felt holy somehow. This simple scene of his daughter sleeping in their humble home, while somewhere across town, a wealthy young woman had found friendship in their cramped kitchen. In all his struggles to provide for Lily, Daniel had never imagined that their greatest gift to others might be showing them how to feel at home in their own skin. The afternoon sun slanted through the Hayes' modest living room window, catching the sequins on Lily's new dress and sending sparkles dancing across the walls. The deep blue gown from Rebecca lay carefully spread across their worn couch, looking like a piece of midnight sky that had somehow drifted into their humble home. "Dad, are you sure I look okay?" Lily twirled in front of their hallway mirror, her hands smoothing invisible wrinkles from the silk fabric. Daniel paused in adjusting his new tie, taking in the sight of his daughter. His chest tightened with emotion. The dress fit her perfectly, transforming his teenage daughter into a young lady who suddenly seemed so grown up. "You look beautiful, sweetheart, just like your mother." Lily's eyes brightened at the mention of her mom. "Really? Really?" Daniel turned back to the mirror, fumbling with his tie again. The crisp black suit Rebecca had sent felt foreign against his skin, so different from his usual work clothes stained with motor oil and grease. A gentle knock at the door made them both jump. Rebecca stood on their porch, elegant in a silver evening gown, her face lit up at the sight of them. "Oh, look at you both! The suits and dresses arrived in time." "Thanks to you," Daniel said, still wrestling with his tie. Rebecca stepped forward, gently batting his hands away to fix it herself. "Remember," she said, smoothing the silk into place, "tonight is about celebrating genuine goodness. Just be yourself, Daniel. That's more than enough." The drive to the Grand Plaza Hotel passed in a blur of nervous excitement. Their old pickup truck looked out of place among the line of sleek luxury cars, but the valet treated them with the same respect as any other guest. Inside, the ballroom took their breath away. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over hundreds of elegantly dressed people. Fresh flowers spilled from tall vases, their sweet scent mixing with the sounds of classical music and pleasant conversation. Henry Jennings himself greeted them at the entrance, his usual stern expression softened by a genuine smile. "Daniel, Lily, welcome to our annual charity gala. You're our guests of honor tonight." As they moved through the crowd, Daniel felt the weight of eyes following them. But unlike the suspicious glances he'd grown used to lately, these looks held admiration. People stepped forward to shake his hand, thanking him for his bravery. Lily's eyes were wide as saucers as she took in everything. "Dad," she whispered, "is this real?" Before he could answer, the lights dimmed and Rebecca stepped up to the podium. The room fell silent. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice clear and strong, "we're here tonight to honor a true hero, a man who, without thought for himself, risked everything to save a stranger." Her eyes found Daniel's in the crowd. "But Daniel Hayes didn't just save my life that day, he restored my faith in humanity. In a world where it's easy to become cynical, he showed me that genuine goodness still exists." The audience hung on her every word as she described that terrible morning, the chaos of gunfire, and Daniel's selfless act. In that moment of crisis, Daniel didn't see the CEO's daughter. He saw another human being in danger. His instinct wasn't to run away, but to protect. Not just me, but his own daughter as well. Daniel felt Lily's hand slip into his as Rebecca continued. "Since that day, I've had the privilege of getting to know Daniel and Lily Hayes. Their home may be modest, but it's filled with more love and integrity than any mansion I've ever known." Applause thundered through the ballroom as Rebecca finished. Daniel stood, overwhelmed by emotion, as hundreds of people rose to their feet in a standing ovation. For one shining moment, everything felt perfect. Then a voice cut through the applause like a knife. "Mr. Hayes, care to comment on your employment history with Sterling Industries?" The room went deadly quiet. A man in a sharp suit stood near the back, holding up a recorder. "Records show you worked for Sterling, Jennings Corp's biggest rival, 3 years ago. Quite a coincidence, wouldn't you say?" Daniel's blood ran cold. He had worked briefly as a mechanic in one of Sterling's garages, but what did that have to do with anything? The journalist pressed on, his voice carrying in the silence. "Sources suggest the shooting incident was staged, a ploy to embarrass the Jennings family and manipulate public opinion. Did Sterling Industries put you up to this?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Daniel stood frozen, the accusation hitting him like a physical blow. He looked around the room, seeing the admiring faces from moments ago now twisted with doubt and suspicion. "That's ridiculous," Lily's voice cracked with emotion. "My dad's a hero." But the damage was done. Whispers spread like wildfire through the ballroom. Daniel saw Henry Jennings' face harden, saw the doubt creep into the eyes of those who'd just been applauding him. "Lily," Daniel said quietly, "it's time to go." They made their way toward the exit, the crowd parting before them like they carried some contagious disease. Rebecca tried to reach them, calling Daniel's name, but security personnel had already stepped between them. Outside, the cool night air hit them like a slap. Camera flashes exploded as reporters surged forward, shoving microphones in Daniel's face. "Mr. Hayes, did you stage the shooting? Were you paid to target Miss Jennings? How long have you been working as a corporate spy?" Daniel wrapped his arm around Lily's shoulders, pulling her close against him as they pushed through the media frenzy. Her body shook with silent sobs, her perfect dress now wrinkled and tear-stained. They walked into the darkness, leaving behind the glittering lights and warmth of a world that had, for one brief moment, welcomed them. The accusations and questions followed them down the street, each one striking deeper than any bullet ever could. The morning sun felt harsh and accusatory as Daniel stared at the newspaper headlines spread across his kitchen table. "Hero or fraud?" screamed one. "CEO's daughter's savior? A calculated plan?" declared another. His coffee grew cold, untouched, as his eyes moved from one damning article to the next. His phone buzzed again. Another call from a reporter. He let it ring. 37 missed calls since last night's gala. The quiet of his kitchen felt suffocating. Outside his window, Mrs. Peterson, who had brought him cookies just last week, hurried past without a glance. Her husband turned his back when Daniel raised his hand in greeting. The familiar ache in his chest, the one that had haunted him since losing his wife, grew sharper. The school's number flashed on his phone. His heart sank as he answered. "Mr. Hayes?" The administrator's voice was cool, professional. "Given recent developments, we need to review Lily's scholarship situation. Perhaps you could come in this afternoon?" Daniel's hand tightened around the phone. "I'll be there." At his auto shop, the morning brought only cancellations. Regular customers who had trusted him for years suddenly found other mechanics. The empty garage echoed with each step he took, tools lying unused on his workbench. Tommy, his assistant of 3 years, cleared his throat awkwardly. "Boss, maybe I should take some time off. Until things, blow over?" Daniel nodded, unable to meet the young man's eyes. Yeah, that might be best." The worst came when he picked up Lily from school early. Her eyes were red, her shoulders hunched as she slipped into his truck. She clutched her backpack like a shield. "They said horrible things, Dad," she whispered, her voice breaking. "They said we're just poor trash trying to grab money, that you planned it all." Daniel's knuckles went white on the steering wheel. "Lily, honey. Sarah, my new best friend, she won't even look at me now." Lily's words tumbled out between sobs. "And the teachers? They used to smile at me. Now they just stare." At home, Daniel watched helplessly as Lily disappeared into her room. The house felt colder somehow, emptier. His phone buzzed again, Rebecca's name on the screen. He hit decline. How could he face her now? What could he possibly say? The afternoon dragged into evening. Bills piled on his counter seemed to mock him. Mortgage, utilities, car payment. Without customers, how long could he keep the shop open? How long before they lost everything? In his bedroom, Daniel pulled out the old shoebox from under his bed. Sarah's things, photographs, letters, her favorite scarf that still held a trace of her perfume. His fingers trembled as he lifted out the small journal she'd kept. Do the right thing, no matter the cost. There it was, in her flowing handwriting. She'd written it the week before the cancer took her, leaving it for him to find. Back then, it had seemed so clear, so simple. Now, the tears came suddenly, hot and bitter. He'd tried so hard to live by those words, to be the man she'd believed in, to give Lily the life she deserved. One moment, one split-second decision to protect someone. It had felt so right, so automatic. Now it threatened to destroy everything. His phone kept buzzing. Emails piled up. Social media exploded with theories and accusations. Each ping felt like another stone in the wall building between him and the world. Night fell, heavy and dark. The house creaked with familiar sounds that now felt lonely and accusing. From down the hall, he could hear Lily's muffled sobs. Daniel's knees hit the carpet beside his bed. His hands clasped so tight they hurt, head bowed in the darkness. "God," he whispered, his voice rough with unshed tears, "I don't understand. I did what you taught us to do. I protected someone who needed help. I didn't want fame or money or any of this." The tears came faster now, dropping onto his clasped hands. "Was it wrong? Did I do this to us, to Lily?" His voice cracked. "She's just a child. She doesn't deserve this. Please don't let my actions destroy her future." Moonlight filtered through his window, casting long shadows across the floor. In the distance, a dog barked, reminding him of how normal everything had been just days ago. "Sarah," he whispered to the empty room, to the memory of his wife. "I tried to do the right thing. I tried to be the man you believed in, but what if the cost is too high? What if doing right means watching our baby girl suffer?" The silence offered no answers. His tears fell freely now, years of stored grief mixing with fresh pain. The weight of it all, single fatherhood, poverty, and now this public shame, pressed down on his shoulders until he could barely breathe. "God," he prayed again, his forehead touching the carpet. Please don't let this all be for nothing. Show me there's still purpose in this. Show me how to protect my little girl." The night grew deeper, and Daniel remained on his knees, his prayers becoming whispers, then silent tears as the moon crossed the sky outside his window. Rebecca stood in her father's study, sunlight streaming through tall windows onto polished mahogany floors. The morning paper lay between them on Henry's massive desk, its headlines like daggers aimed at Daniel's reputation. Her father sat back in his leather chair, lines of exhaustion creasing his face. "This is wrong, Dad," Rebecca said, her voice trembling with barely contained anger. "We both know Daniel Hayes is innocent. How can we let them destroy him like this?" Henry Jennings rubbed his temples. "Of course it's wrong. But corporate warfare isn't clean, Rebecca. These rivals, they're like sharks circling blood in the water. If we defend him too strongly now, they'll only push harder." So we do nothing? Rebecca's hands clenched into fists. That man took a bullet for me. I understand your feelings, but no. Rebecca cut him off, something she'd rarely dared to do before. You don't understand. You haven't seen what this is doing to him and Lily. Their neighbors won't even look at them anymore. The school is threatening to revoke Lily's scholarship. His business is dying. Henry stood, walking to the window. The corporate world is complicated, sweetheart. Sometimes we have to wait for the right moment to— I'm done waiting. Rebecca grabbed her purse from the chair. If you won't help, I'll find the truth myself. Her father turned, surprise evident on his face. What are you planning? Whatever it takes. She headed for the door, then paused. You taught me to recognize patterns in business, Dad. Well, I see one now. The timing of that journalist's evidence was too perfect. Someone wanted to humiliate you by destroying Daniel, and I'm going to prove it. Over the next week, Rebecca threw herself into investigation. She hired Marcus Chen, the best private investigator in the city, paying him from her personal accounts. Together, they dug through employment records, corporate filings, and financial transactions. The breakthrough came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Marcus burst into her office, water dripping from his coat. Found it, he said, dropping a thick folder on her desk. The journalist who ambushed Mr. Hayes, he received a massive wire transfer 3 days before the gala, traced it through shell companies back to Continental Industries. Our biggest rivals, Rebecca breathed, flipping through the documents. And Daniel's supposed connection to them? Completely fabricated. They doctored employment records. Here's proof. The company they claimed he worked for didn't even exist during the dates they cited. Rebecca gathered the evidence with shaking hands. This is it. This will clear his name. She drove straight to Daniel's house, her windshield wipers fighting the steady rain. The small home looked more worn than ever, its paint peeling in the damp weather. When Daniel opened the door, the shadows under his eyes made her heart ache. Rebecca? He glanced nervously at the street, as if expecting photographers to jump out of the bushes. You shouldn't be here. People will talk. Let them. She pushed past him into the living room, spreading the documents across his coffee table. Look at this, Daniel. We have proof it was all lies. He stared at the papers, not touching them. What difference does it make now? The damage is done. It makes all the difference. We can clear your name. Show everyone the truth. Daniel sank onto his worn couch, looking defeated. The truth? The truth is, I'm tired, Rebecca. Tired of fighting. Tired of watching Lily suffer. Maybe it's better to just fade away. Let people forget. No. Rebecca sat beside him, taking his rough worker's hands in hers. The Daniel Hayes I know doesn't give up. The man who ran toward Gunfire to save a stranger, he fights for what's right. That was different. That was simple. Just doing what needed to be done. This? He gestured at the papers. This is a world I don't understand. Your world of corporate games and power plays. Then let me fight for you this time. Rebecca's grip tightened on his hands. You didn't just save me that day. You saved me from a life without hope. Let me do the same for you. Daniel looked up, meeting her eyes. For the first time, he saw not just the wealthy CEO's daughter, but a woman of strength and determination, someone who, like him, understood the cost of doing what was right. The front door opened and Lily stepped in, shaking rain from her umbrella. She froze at the sight of Rebecca, hope flickering across her young face. Rebecca? Lily's voice was small, uncertain. Are you here to help? Rebecca stood, drawing Daniel up with her. Yes, sweetheart. And this time, we're not backing down. Your dad taught me something important, that real courage means standing up for what's right, no matter the cost. Now, it's our turn to stand up for him. Daniel looked between them, his daughter and the woman whose life he'd saved. In their faces, he saw a reflection of his own determination, the same spirit that had driven him to act without thinking that day in the plaza. Okay, he said quietly. What's our next step? Rebecca smiled, a fierce light in her eyes. We take this evidence to the media, not the tabloids, but real journalists who care about truth. We show the world who you really are, Daniel Hayes, and we make those who tried to destroy you answer for their lies. Lily moved to her father's side, slipping her hand into his. Rain drummed on the roof, but inside the small house, something had changed. Hope, fragile but real, began to take root again. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the towering glass windows of Jennings' corporate headquarters. Camera crews jostled for position in the packed press room, their equipment creating a forest of microphones and lenses. The air hummed with tension and whispered speculation. Daniel Hayes stood awkwardly at the edge of the stage, his work-worn hands clasped tightly behind his back. The suit Rebecca had given him for the gala still fit perfectly, but he felt out of place among the corporate polish. Lily pressed close to his side, her young face a mixture of worry and hope. Rebecca touched his arm gently. "It's going to be okay," she whispered. "Trust us." Henry Jennings approached the podium with the commanding presence of a man who'd spent decades in boardrooms. The cameras clicked frantically as he adjusted the microphone, his face grave. "Ladies and gentlemen," Henry began, his voice filling the room, "we've called this press conference to address the recent allegations against Daniel Hayes." He paused, his eyes scanning the crowd. "What you're about to see is evidence of a coordinated attack on an innocent man's character." The large screen behind him flickered to life, displaying emails and documents. Daniel's heart pounded as he recognized the fabricated story of his supposed connection to corporate rivals. "These documents," Henry continued, pointing to the screen, were traced back to a sophisticated disinformation campaign orchestrated by individuals attempting to destabilize both my company and Mr. Hayes's reputation. He gestured to his legal team, who began distributing detailed packets to the press. Rebecca stepped forward then, her elegant posture a stark contrast to her trembling hands. "I'd like to speak if I may," she said, moving to stand beside her father. The room fell silent. Rebecca took a deep breath, her eyes finding Daniel's for strength. "3 weeks ago, I watched Daniel Hayes risk his life to save mine, not because I was Henry Jennings's daughter, but because I was a human being in danger." Her voice grew stronger with each word. "He didn't know who I was. He didn't calculate the benefits. He simply acted with pure, instinctive courage." Camera flashes intensified. Daniel felt Lily's hand slip into his, squeezing tight. "Since then," Rebecca continued, "I've gotten to know Daniel and his daughter Lily. I've seen firsthand how they live, with dignity, faith, and kindness, despite having so little. The suggestion that Daniel orchestrated his own heroism for financial gain isn't just false. It's cruel." She turned to face Daniel directly now, tears gleaming in her eyes. "You can't fake the kind of integrity Daniel Hayes possesses. You can't stage the kind of father he is to Lily. And you certainly can't buy the type of courage it takes to throw yourself in front of a bullet for a stranger." The room erupted in spontaneous applause. Even hardened reporters were nodding, their pens scratching furiously across notepads. Henry returned to the podium, his corporate mask softening slightly. "We have submitted all evidence to the proper authorities. Those responsible will be held accountable." He straightened his shoulders. "But today isn't about corporate rivalry or legal action. It's about setting the record straight regarding a good man who deserved better from all of us." Daniel felt a gentle push from Rebecca. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward to the podium, Lily still clutching his hand. The lights were blinding, the attention overwhelming, but when he looked down at his daughter's upturned face, he found his voice. "I'm not much for speeches," he began simply. "I'm just a mechanic who tries to do right by his daughter and help others when I can. That's all I was doing that day in the plaza." He swallowed hard. "These past weeks have been difficult. But my late wife always said that truth would find its way to the light." More applause filled the room. Reporters called out questions, their voices overlapping. "Mr. Hayes, how does it feel to be vindicated? Will you be taking legal action against your accusers? What message do you have for those who doubted you?" Before Daniel could respond, Lily stepped forward, her young voice clear and strong. "My dad's a hero. Not just because he saved Rebecca, but because he never stopped being good, even when people were being mean to him." The press corps collectively softened at her words. Cameras clicked rapidly, capturing the moment as Daniel wrapped his arm around his daughter's shoulders, drawing her close. "See, Dad?" Lily whispered, just loud enough for the closest microphones to catch. "Truth always wins." Daniel hugged her tightly, his eyes closing against sudden tear. Through the camera flashes, he could see tomorrow's headlines already taking shape, not of scandal and suspicion, but of vindication and victory, of a father's love and a daughter's faith, of truth finally coming to light. The applause continued, washing over them like a cleansing rain. Rebecca stood nearby, beaming through her tears, while Henry Jennings watched with newfound respect. In that moment, surrounded by cameras capturing their embrace, Daniel felt the weight of false accusations finally lifting from his shoulders. String lights twinkled like earthbound stars across the community center's courtyard. Fresh autumn air carried the scent of coffee and home-baked cookies through the evening gathering. Daniel Hayes adjusted his tie, still not quite comfortable in formal wear even after these past weeks, and watched his daughter Lily arrange flowers on the welcome table. The banner above read, Hayes Jennings Foundation, Building Bridges, Restoring Hope. Simple words that carried so much meaning. Daniel touched the lettering, remembering how far they'd come from that terrifying day in the plaza. Everything's perfect, Dad, Lily said, straightening a centerpiece. Her eyes sparkled with pride as she surveyed their work. She wore a modest blue dress that matched the foundation's colors, her hair neatly braided. The veterans' families are starting to arrive. Rebecca Jennings stepped through the main doors, clipboard in hand. She'd insisted on personally overseeing every detail of the foundation's launch event. The caterers are set up, she announced, and the first bus from the shelter just pulled in. She smiled warmly at Daniel. Your speech cards are ready at the podium. Daniel nodded, his throat tight with emotion. The community center's main hall was filling quickly, a beautiful mix of people from all walks of life. Veterans in pressed uniforms sat beside corporate executives. Single mothers who'd received help from the foundation's first outreach program chatted with local business owners. Henry Jennings stood near the refreshment table, deep in conversation with a former Marine. The CEO had changed since the press conference that cleared Daniel's name. There was a softness in his eyes now when he looked at Rebecca, a willingness to see beyond balance sheets and corporate strategy. 5 minutes until your welcome speech, Rebecca reminded Daniel gently. She squeezed his arm. You've got this. Daniel took a deep breath, remembering his late wife's words about doing the right thing. He never imagined that simple act of protection would lead to this moment, standing before a crowd, ready to lead an organization dedicated to helping others. The room quieted as Daniel approached the podium. Lily and Rebecca took their seats in the front row, both beaming with encouragement. Under the warm lights, faces turned toward him expectantly. Good evening, Daniel began, his voice steady despite his racing heart. I'm not much for fancy speeches. I'm just a mechanic who tried to do the right thing one day. He paused, looking at the diverse crowd before him. But that's really what this foundation is about. Ordinary people choosing to help others when the moment calls. The room stayed silent, attentive. Daniel continued, gaining confidence. I've learned that extraordinary acts don't require extraordinary people. They just require open hearts and willing hands. Every person in this room has that capacity within them. He gestured to the veterans seated throughout the hall. Like these brave men and women who served our country, they didn't wait for someone else to step up. They answered the call. His eyes found a young mother holding a sleeping toddler. Like the single parents working multiple jobs to give their children better lives. That's everyday heroism. Rebecca dabbed at her eyes with a tissue as Daniel spoke about faith, community, and the power of small kindnesses. Lily sat straight-backed, her face glowing with pride. This foundation isn't about handouts, Daniel explained. It's about standing together, recognizing that we're all capable of lifting each other up. Whether that means helping a veteran find employment, supporting a struggling family, or simply being there when someone needs hope, we all have something to give. The applause that followed was genuine, heartfelt. People stood, their faces showing recognition of simple truths spoken plainly. Henry Jennings nodded approvingly from his seat, while Rebecca's smile could have lit up the room by itself. As the evening progressed, Daniel moved through the crowd, shaking hands and listening to stories. Each person who approached him shared a different journey, a different struggle, but the same human desire to find dignity and purpose. Finally, as the event began winding down, Daniel stepped outside into the courtyard with Lily and Rebecca. The string lights created a peaceful glow against the darkening sky. Music drifted softly through the open doors behind them. Lily reached out, taking both their hands in hers. The gesture was so natural, so innocent. It caught Daniel by surprise. Rebecca's gentle laugh floated on the evening air, mixing with the distant sound of crickets. Standing there, Daniel felt something he hadn't experienced since losing his wife, a sense of completeness, of family. Not replacing what was lost, but building something new and beautiful from the foundations of faith and trust. He looked up at the vast night sky, stars twinkling between scattered clouds. His heart swelled with gratitude, not for the recognition or opportunities that had come his way, but for this precious gift, the chance to love, to protect, and to inspire others through simple acts of courage and compassion. The kitchen was bright with morning sunlight as Daniel Hayes flipped pancakes on the worn griddle, just as he had done countless mornings before. But today felt different. The stack of bills that once dominated their counter had been replaced by Lily's latest school awards and a framed photo from the foundation's opening night. "Dad, you're burning that one," Lily called from the table, where she sat surrounded by textbooks and notebooks. "Your father never burns pancakes," Rebecca said, reaching past Daniel to grab plates from the cabinet. She moved through their modest kitchen with the ease of someone who had found her place there. "He's got some kind of pancake radar," Daniel chuckled, sliding the perfectly golden brown pancake onto the growing stack. "It's all in the bubbles. When they're just right, you flip." The doorbell chimed, and Lily jumped up to answer it. Henry Jennings stood in the doorway, looking almost casual in a sweater rather than his usual suit. He carried a box of fresh pastries from the local bakery. "Good morning," Henry said, stepping inside. The stiffness that once characterized his movements had softened. "I hope I'm not interrupting breakfast." "Just in time, actually," Daniel replied, gesturing to the table. "There's plenty to go around." Rebecca hugged her father, and something in Henry's expression shifted, a tenderness that had been buried beneath years of corporate responsibility. "The house smells wonderful," he said, settling into a chair beside his daughter. Lily bounced in her seat, barely containing her excitement. "Dad, can I tell everyone about my project now?" Daniel nodded, carrying the platter of pancakes to the table. "Floor's yours, sweetheart." "So, for my school's community impact assignment, I'm organizing a mentorship program," Lily explained, her words tumbling out in a rush. "We're pairing high school students with kids from the families the foundation helps, like study buddies, but more than that, real friends who understand what it's like to face challenges." Rebecca's face lit up. "That's brilliant, Lily. We could integrate it into the foundation's youth programs." "Already thinking like a director," Henry commented, smiling at Daniel. "She takes after you." Daniel watched his daughter explain her ideas, her hands moving animatedly as she spoke. Gone was the girl who had once hidden from cruel comments and sideways glances. In her place sat a young woman full of purpose and compassion. "The Foundation's Education Committee would love to hear this," Rebecca said, jotting notes on her phone. "Speaking of which, Daniel, we should discuss the new veteran transition program. I've been researching some promising approaches." Henry cleared his throat softly. "Before we dive into business, I wanted to say something." He set down his coffee cup, looking directly at Daniel. "When Rebecca was young, after her mother passed, I threw myself into work. I thought success would give her everything she needed. But watching you these past months, Daniel, seeing how you lead with heart, how you put family first, I realize I had it backward." Rebecca reached for her father's hand, squeezing it gently. "You didn't just save my daughter's life that day," Henry continued. "You showed her what real courage looks like, what family feels like, and for that, I can never thank you enough." Daniel felt the weight of the moment, remembering all the turns their journey had taken, from that terrifying day in the plaza to the darkness of false accusations, and finally to this morning where hope filled their home like sunlight. "I just did what anyone would do," he said quietly. "No," Henry replied. "You did what you would do. That's what makes it extraordinary." After breakfast, as Henry left for a board meeting, the morning settled into its new familiar rhythm. Lily gathered her books, chattering about her upcoming chemistry test. Rebecca reviewed foundation documents at the table, her reading glasses perched on her nose. "Ready for our morning walk?" Rebecca asked, looking up from her papers. It had become their tradition, a quiet moment before the day truly began. Daniel nodded, and soon they were strolling through the neighborhood park where dew still sparkled on the grass. Lily walked ahead of them, stopping occasionally to take pictures of flowers with her phone. The morning air was crisp, carrying the promise of autumn. Children's laughter drifted from the playground nearby, where early risers were already starting their day. Rebecca slipped her arm through Daniel's as they walked. The gesture felt natural, comfortable. "Sometimes I still can't believe how much has changed," she said softly. Daniel watched Lily kneel to examine a particularly interesting flower. "Good changes," he replied. "The best," Rebecca agreed. The sun continued its slow climb into the morning sky, painting everything in soft golden light. Daniel smiled, filled with quiet gratitude. His simple act of protection had rippled outward, touching more lives than he could have imagined. But more than that, it had given him something he thought he'd lost forever: the warmth of family, the joy of purpose, and the profound peace of knowing he was exactly where he was meant to be. From a single moment of courage in a crowded plaza, a mechanic's sacrifice transformed not just his life, but the lives of everyone around him. A daughter's pride restored, a young woman's faith rekindled, and a family broken by loss slowly finding its way back to wholeness. But just when peace feels certain, a new shadow rises, a rival voice lurking in silence, waiting for the right moment to strike. What happens when the past Daniel thought he buried comes knocking? Don't miss what happens next. Click the next video now. Subscribe so you never miss a story of faith, courage, and redemption. And tell us your theory in the comments below. Could Daniel's past undo everything he has built? Thank you so much for spending this time with us, friends. Your presence here means more than you know. If this story touched your heart, I'd love for you to share where you're watching from in the comments, and maybe even a personal reflection or memory it stirred in you. If you believe in stories that celebrate courage, compassion, and second chances, I'd be honored if you subscribed or followed. Together, we can keep spreading light through narratives that remind us what truly matters. Wherever you are, know this: you are seen, you are valued, and your story matters too. Until next time, may hope guide you, and may love always find its way back to you.